So I've sewn all my sashing strips in place, both the small ones and then the longer strips that go across the length of the quilt. And one thing that I didn't mention in the previous video, but I figured that after having done all these different blocks, you guys should be practicing this already by now. You should still be trying to line this up so that then when you stand back from the finished quilt, it will still look like one continuous strip that just basically weaves under the one that's going horizontally, okay? So just, you're always trying to match up points and do what you can. If it doesn't match up, don't worry too much about it. I actually, the last row here, I did it off a little bit, off-centered, and let me show you a close-up of that. So in this row, you can see that it's not matched up, meaning that this strip doesn't follow all the way straight. Here, it's a little bit off to the right, it's off-centered. I mean, if you're looking at it close-up, you can definitely see it, but it's not going to make too much of a difference. After it's quilted and stuff, you can also work with it and try to line it up a little bit straighter. But if this is your first quilt, I would definitely not worry too much about it. I actually did it on purpose on this quilt and it doesn't bother me at all. Just try to do your best, and I promise you that after you continue to make more quilts, you'll get even better at matching up the different points. Now when it comes to the corners, okay, on the outside corners of your quilt, try to get everything as square as you can get it, but if it's not perfectly square, I would not start trimming at this point, okay? Because if you start cutting, you're going to start making this border or the outside sashing strips narrower and narrower. So what you want to do is we're actually going to quilt the entire quilt, and then at the end of it, after it's already quilted, all three layers are together, and after the entire thing is quilted, that's when we're going to go back and square up all our corners so that the quilt can lay nice and flat and get ready for binding. So the next step is to measure across some different points on our quilt top so we can determine how much fabric we're going to need for our backing fabric, because we want the backing fabric to be larger than the quilt top, okay? I'm going to take some measurements here. You usually want to measure in 3 different spots. On one end, on the other, and then also down the center. On the center, you're more likely to get a more accurate reading as far as the actual measurements of your quilt top because it's a little bit more stabilized down the center. On the top and the bottom, or on the outside edges, all 4 outside edges, it can get a little bit skewed. As we're sewing on these strips, stuff can move and the fabric can get distorted on you. So oftentimes you'll find that the outside edges are a little bit off from what your actual measurement should be. So 44.5 is the measurement that I should read here. And I can almost guarantee you it's not going to be that. So right there. And I actually have 45.5 inches, so I have an extra inch somewhere there. That's okay, it's no big deal. This right here, we're not double checking to see how accurate you were with your piecing. We simply want to have the measurement so that we can figure out how much backing fabric we'll need, because you definitely don't want to have a shortage on the backing side. If I come over this side, closer to the ends, I have 45. And if I come over here, I have 45.25. So we just want to write those numbers down. So I'm going to go with the highest number so that I can account for that in my fabric. So I'm going to say 45.5 that way. And then let's go across the other dimension. This should measure 58.5. And instead it measures 59.5. So I have an extra inch in there. So basically what that tells me is that my 1/4 inch seam allowances were on the skinnier side. We're a little bit more scant than I should have done them. But that's okay. Not a big deal. I have 59.5 there. I'm going to go up here as well. And so you're going to measure across one way and the other in a few different spots. And if your measurements vary, simply go with the largest number so you can make sure that you account for that in your backing fabric. So I have about 59.5 by 45.5. And now I know that I'm going to need a backing piece that is larger than that, at least by 3 or 4 inches on each side. The amount that you add on extra is really going to depend on what you plan to do for quilting. If you're going to be hand quilting it or machine quilting it, you may not need that much. Now if you're taking it to a long armor, they may even require sometimes 6 or 8 inches larger on each side. So you want to keep that in mind when you're choosing out your backing fabric. Okay, so I have a sample block here, which is going to be the smaller scale idea of my quilt. Okay, I'm going to show you all what you're going to do next, and let's pretend that this is my quilt top. We've gone ahead and taken some measurements, okay? Remember I said in 3 different spots, so here I have, 12.5. Down the center I have a little less than 12.5, and here I have a little less than 12.5. So what I'm going to do is, well, let's measure the other side as well. This is 12.5. Almost 12.5, and 12.5. So what I'm going to do is I now know that I need to add on extra for the backing fabric that's going to back this quilt top. So if this is 12 and a half, right, which is, I'm going to go with the largest measurement. I don't have any sides that are longer than the 12 and a half. So to the 12 and a half, I now want to add at least 3 or 4 inches on each side. And when I say you're adding to it, you want to add the 3 or 4 inches to each side. So don't just say 12 and a half plus 3 inches. It needs to be 12 and a half plus 6 or plus 8 inches or something like that, right? Just to give you the extra. So this is going to be my backing fabric. And since this is a smaller project, you can see this can fit nicely in the center there, and I have a nice border of excess backing fabric. This is what you want your quilt top to look like. Now I realize that the quilt that we've made is wider, okay, in one side than fabric that comes off the bolt, because usually the fabric will measure between 40 and 44 inches or so, and we've already established that one of my sides over there is 45 and a half inches wide. So that already tells me that I'm probably going to have to piece my backing, which is not a big deal. But they will also sell fabric at the fabric store that's specifically for backings that measures 90 inches wide or 100 and something inches wide. So when you're working on larger quilts, you always have that option of just laying the fabric out without having to piece anything. So I'm laying out my backing fabric with the pretty side facing down, okay, because now we're going to build our quilt sandwich, is what we call it, because it's 3 layers. You have backing fabric, then we're going to have the batting is going to be the next layer, and then the pretty quilt top right on top. So what you want to do with the backing fabric is smooth it out on some kind of flat surface. Since this is a smaller version, I'm using, this is just one of those ironing pressing board things that has like foam in it or something, and so I can pin right through the fabric into the lower level. If you have carpet, you can also do this as well. Just use some large pins. These are like corsage pins, and you can see the difference with a regular pin, both in the length and in the thickness of the actual pin itself. And you can just pin it like that into your carpet. Just make sure that you pick them all up. We don't want anybody stepping on those. If you don't have carpet, you can also do it on a table, a conference room, maybe a dining room table, or even on a flat floor that may be vinyl or something, or wooden floors. What I would recommend you did in that case is tape this down with some painter's tape, something that has low tack on it so it won't pull the fabric threads out or mess up the lower surface that you're putting it on, okay? So you want to put this down, secure it down to something flat, and I smoothed it out from the center out. I want this to be completely flat with no puckers in it. Okay. The next layer of our quilt sandwich is our batting. I'm using just 100% cotton batting, and so I'm laying this there. You can see that the batting is a little bit smaller than the backing, but it's still definitely larger than my quilt top. And this is usually how I like to do it. Something like that, okay? You want to make sure that you have an excess of each of the different fabrics going around on all sides, the batting and the backing fabric. After you've laid down your quilt top, then what you need to do is baste this into place. And there are quite a few different ways, and I'm actually going to link you guys right here to a few other YouTube video creators who have some great videos, and they actually do this a lot more than I do. I don't do this step as far as basting goes because I have a long arm machine. And when you're long arming it, you don't need to put the layers together. The machine and the rollers will do the work for you. So you can click right here to go watch those videos and you can learn. I'm including a video from my friend Pat Sloan, who has a great video on pin basting. Then I have another video linked here where you can see how to spray baste it, which is another option. After you've basted your quilt layers, okay, your entire quilt together, okay, there's a few, well actually there's a lot of different options. You can take it to a long armor, of course, and have it professionally done. Another option you have is hand tying your quilt, which is done with a large needle and some embroidery floss or some yarn, and it's a great and super easy way that anybody can do it to finish off your quilt. You can click right here and I'll send you to my tutorial on how to hand tie a quilt. You can also machine quilt it on your machine, and I'm including a link here to Leah Day's channel. If you're somebody who wants to get into machine quilting on your sewing machine, all the resources and all the information that you need is right there. The video that I'm linking to here is a video that she has on how to set up for machine quilting and how to do some stitching in the ditch. I used to do some machine quilting myself, and here's a little quilt that I made years ago. And so just to show you an example of stitching in the ditch. Right here, you can see that the design pops out and it looks almost as if it's like traced, made to pop out like that. And what it is simply stitching along the seam lines so that where it stitches, it basically is going to push down the batting, and then everything else is going to puff up around it. So it's a really good design idea when you want different elements of your quilt blocks to stand out, and it's really simple to do. Anybody with a domestic sewing machine can do it. I definitely recommend you have a walking foot on your machine to feed it through, especially if you're using a bulkier batting or your fabrics are kind of thick. And so this is done on machine as well. If you want to look up some tutorials on how to do free motion quilting, check out Leah Day's channel, because she has, I mean, hundreds and hundreds of different free motion designs that you can practice and use them in your own quilt tops. Now, if you choose to send your quilt to a long armor, there's all kinds of designs that can be done. There's computerized ones if their machine has those features. There's hand guided, which is what I do. It's all basic free motion, and it's just my hands guiding the machine. You can definitely do this on a regular domestic sewing machine. I just do it with my long arm because that's what I have. You can see on the back how it looks. So I hope you'll consider giving all these different videos a look-see on everybody else's channels here, and that you'll start working on your quilt top so you can get that quilt quilted. In the next 2 weeks, you'll see me back here, and what we're going to do in that next video tutorial of this series is to square up our quilt. Imagine these edges were raw. What I do is, after it's all quilted, I'll take a square ruler here and trim it up to size so that all my corners are nice and square. And the importance of that is that when you get ready to put the final touches on your quilt, which is this binding here, you can put it on and it'll be nice and square just like you see here.